A woman never looks at you and speaks attraction directly. No open declaration, no clear invitation. Instead, signals appear through behavior most men overlook. Hands become the language. Movement replaces words. You miss it when attention stays locked on speech alone. You sit there thinking conversation reveals interest, while another system runs underneath. Silent, physical, continuous. You do not hear it. You watch the wrong channel. Stop for a second. Think about how many moments slipped past without meaning. Like and subscribe for more insights like this. You meet a woman. Conversation flows. She smiles at the right times. She responds politely. You leave thinking nothing special happened. Later, something repeats in your memory. Small movements, her fingers, her hair, a shift in posture when you spoke. You ignored all of it because nothing felt obvious. You felt calm on the surface. Confusion stayed underneath. You sit there, replaying the moment, searching words for answers. Words never held the answer. A deeper layer sits beneath spoken interaction. A woman reacts before awareness catches up. Nervous system shifts first. Thoughts follow after. Hands become the outlet. Hair becomes the outlet. Neck becomes the outlet. Objects nearby become the outlet. You notice small behavior changes around specific men. Not random, not scattered, pattern-based. This raises a question. Why do these movements appear only in certain moments? Most men never reach this question. Attention stays locked on tone, laughter, and phrases. Real signals pass through unnoticed space between actions. You sit across from her. She adjusts her hair once. Then again. Fingers move without reason you understand at first glance. You think it is habit. You move on mentally. Moment passes. But repetition begins forming under surface-level awareness. Something changes in her body language when conversation shifts toward you. Not toward others, toward you. Then confusion starts. You sense difference, but explanation stays missing. Stop for a moment. What if attraction never starts with words at all? What if body response leads every signal before thought arrives? This shifts everything you learned about reading interest. Because now attention moves away from speech and into physical behavior happening in real time. You start noticing change in rhythm. You start noticing timing. You start noticing repetition patterns tied directly to your presence. Most men miss this entire layer, not because signals stay hidden, because focus stays in wrong place. A woman touching her hair during interaction holds meaning only inside context, not isolated movement. Pattern determines meaning. You sit with her. She leans slightly forward while listening. Fingers move toward hair. She twists a strand slowly while maintaining eye contact. You assume nervous habit. You dismiss it, but repetition begins building across moments you share. Different scene, different moment, same behavior returns, same timing, same interaction window. Now pattern forms. Internal arousal response changes behavior before awareness catches it. Emotional activation increases internal energy. Body seeks release point. Hands become primary outlet. Hair becomes accessible target. You notice it during silence between sentences. You notice it during moments when conversation slows. Her fingers engage with hair without clear need. Movement feels slightly extended beyond practical grooming. You miss beginning stage of signal because attention stays on speech. You look at her speaking. She looks fine. Calm expression. Normal tone. Then hand rises again. Hair adjustment repeats. Stop for a second. Look closer. Why same motion appears near your presence, but not in every environment? Behavior alone means nothing without repetition tied to context. You sit with her across multiple interactions. Same pattern repeats. Hair movement increases during engagement with you. No announcement, No verbal signal, only physical response pattern building in real time. Now awareness starts forming. You begin separating random habit from response behavior. Hair movement linked to comfort and emotional activation becomes visible only when attention shifts toward specific person. You notice it but ignore it first. Then it repeats again. Then timing becomes familiar. Then silence between sentences changes behavior again. Something is forming beneath surface interaction. You sit in a cafe. Conversation moves normally. She listens while you speak. She brushes hair behind ears slowly. Eye contact stays longer than expected. Then moment shifts. You pause speaking. Silence appears. Her fingers return to hair again without clear need. You move on internally. But pattern builds in background. Hair behavior during attraction reflects internal energy regulation. Body releases emotional activation through movement when words remain controlled. You never hear her say anything about it. Body already expressed signal before language arrived. You felt something shift in moment. You ignored it. Now it repeats across interactions. If hair becomes first outlet for emotional activation, attention naturally moves toward deeper vulnerability zones next. Neck, collarbone, areas tied to subconscious openness. Hair movement starts simple, then behavior moves closer toward exposed regions. You begin noticing pattern expansion beyond surface-level gestures. This leads into next stage of reading attraction signals, where body language becomes more revealing and less controlled. Something changes when attention moves from hair toward neck behavior. You will recognize it immediately once pattern becomes visible. A small shift enters first. Not loud, not dramatic. Subtle change in focus during interaction. Her hand moves away from hair and drifts lower. Neck becomes the new point of contact. You sit across from her. Conversation stays normal. Her fingers slide alongside of her neck for a brief moment. Slow movement, not random scratching. A gentle trace along skin near collarbone. You feel a pause inside the moment. Energy changes without words changing. You ignore it at first. Mind searches for ordinary explanation. Adjustment, habit, comfort. Then it happens again later in same interaction. Same area, same slow movement, same timing when conversation leans toward you. Now, repetition starts forming. A woman avoids exposing vulnerable areas in neutral emotional state. Neck sits among the most exposed zones. When attention rises and emotional activation increases, the body begins to soften control around those areas. You sit there speaking. She listens with steady eye contact. Fingers return to neck again during silence between sentences. Light touch, almost absent-minded. You notice difference between this and hair movement. Hair feels external. Neck feels internal. Closer to emotion. Closer to response. Something shifts in how she holds herself. You lean forward slightly while speaking. She mirrors small posture change. Head tilts a little. Neck becomes more visible. Hand rests near collarbone for a moment longer than needed. Silence grows between words. Her fingers stay near skin instead of returning to table or object in front of her. You feel tension building inside, moments without clear reason. Most men miss this stage because attention stays locked on speech. Words feel safe. Body language feels secondary. Real signal stays outside spoken layer. Neck touch appears when internal regulation increases. Emotional activation creates physical outlet. Hair stops being main focus. Neck takes its place. You watch her adjust necklace. Fingers slide along chain resting on upper chest. Movement repeats once more during pause in conversation. Now pattern becomes visible. You start noticing timing. Behavior appears when attention from her shifts toward you. Not random moments. Specific moments when eye contact holds slightly longer. When silence stretches slightly more than usual, stop for a moment. Look at repetition instead of single action. A single touch means nothing. Repeated touch tied to presence builds meaning. Her posture relaxes during interaction. Shoulders loosen. Neck exposure increases. Guard level drops in small steps. You speak. She listens. Her hand rises again toward neck during your sentence. Light contact. No rush. No interruption of conversation flow. Then hand lowers. Then returns again later. This cycle builds pattern recognition. Neck behavior differs from hair behavior and intensity. Hair movement signals nervous activation. Neck movement signals comfort mixed with emotional response. Vulnerability increases. You begin seeing contrast between neutral behavior and behavior during interaction with you. Same woman, different response patterns. You feel shift, but do not name it yet. Another layer appears. Her breathing changes slightly during engagement. Slower rhythm, longer pauses between movements. Body settles into presence with you instead of scanning environment. Neck touch appears again during quiet moment. Fingers rest lightly near collarbone. Skin contact lasts longer this time. You notice stillness between actions increases. Stillness itself becomes signal. Most men overlook stillness. Focus stays on movement only. But stillness between movements reveals internal state more clearly than action alone. You sit there watching conversation continue. Her eyes stay on you. Hand moves to neck again during brief silence after your sentence. Now pattern repeats 3 times across same interaction cycle. Meaning begins forming through repetition instead of explanation. You start questioning difference between comfort and attraction. Comfort creates relaxed posture. Attraction adds physical self-awareness mixed with release behavior. Neck touch sits between both states. You see small grooming adjustments shift into emotional regulation behavior. Head tilts slightly when you speak. Neck becomes more exposed. Fingers return to same area without instruction. You feel moments stretch longer than normal conversation rhythm. Then something else begins to appear. Her attention starts moving toward lips. Not sudden shift. Gradual transition from neck awareness into facial focus. She touches lower lip during pause. Slow motion. Finger rests near mouth for a second longer than needed for ordinary adjustment. You speak again. She maintains eye contact while lips receive brief touch again. Now pattern expands beyond neck. Neck signals emotional openness. Lip signals attention direction. Both appear together when internal response increases. You notice coordination between gestures. Hair earlier, neck now, lips entering sequence. Each layer builds without verbal confirmation. You sit in conversation, observing rhythm instead of words. She leans slightly forward again. Neck becomes visible. Fingers trace collarbone lightly during silence. Then hand moves away and returns to lips for brief adjustment. Energy feels different now. Not loud, not chaotic. Controlled, but active. You sense pull inside interaction without clear explanation forming in mind yet. Most men search for direct signals, words, statements, confirmation. Body language operates below verbal level. You begin seeing structure beneath surface behavior. A pattern forms. Hair signals early activation. Neck signals emotional exposure. Lips signal focused attention. Each layer increases intensity. You watch her adjust posture again. Shoulder alignment changes. Neck angle shifts toward you. Eye contact holds longer during silence. Then hand returns to object near her. Ring or bracelet becomes focus point for movement. Fingers rotate slowly around it during your speech. Repetitive motion, same rhythm as earlier gestures. Now object interaction enters sequence. Energy requires outlet. When body no longer uses hair or neck exclusively, surrounding objects absorb remaining expression. You notice consistency. Same pattern repeats across different moments within same interaction. Behavior does not appear random anymore. Structure becomes visible. You sit there observing instead of reacting. Silence between sentences feels different now. Not empty. Active. She adjusts position slightly again. Neck exposed briefly. Lips touched once more during pause. Fingers return to object afterward. Cycle continues. You feel awareness rising without forcing interpretation. Something inside interaction shifts from simple conversation into layered communication system. Body language speaks more than words ever carried, in moment. You recognize transition, forming toward next stage where physical contact between two people begins replacing indirect signals. Neck, lips, objects. Sequence builds toward direct interaction. Next layer brings physical contact into equation. This is where most men lose clarity. Because up to this point, you have been observing indirect signals. Hair, neck, lips, objects. All of it still sits on her side of the interaction. But physical contact changes direction. Now the signal moves toward you. You sit across from her. Conversation feels normal on the surface. She laughs at something you say. Eye contact holds a little longer than before. Then it happens. Her hand touches your arm. Brief contact. Light pressure. Natural timing. Most men freeze here. Not because they do not feel it, because they do not understand what just happened. You feel a shift in the moment. Something small changes in energy between both of you. Then confusion starts. Do you react? Do you ignore it? Do you assume meaning or treat it as nothing? That uncertainty is where opportunity gets lost. A woman does not create physical contact randomly in a controlled social setting. There is always context, always timing, always emotional buildup before it happens. You already saw the buildup in section 2. Hair became repetition, neck became exposure, lips became attention focus, objects became emotional outlet. Now body stops redirecting energy into objects and starts directing it outward, toward you. You notice it again later in the interaction. Another touch. Slightly longer this time. Hand rests near your shoulder during laughter. Not forceful, not exaggerated, controlled but intentional. You feel it again. This is where most men misread the situation completely. Some assume friendliness, some assume coincidence, some ignore it to avoid overthinking. But none of those reactions match what is actually happening underneath. Physical contact during emotional engagement is not neutral behavior. It is boundary testing and comfort confirmation at the same time. You sit there and continue conversation, but awareness shifts now. You begin noticing timing patterns. Does she touch you when you speak about personal topics? Does it happen during pauses? Does it appear after eye contact moments that last slightly longer than normal? These details matter more than the touch itself. Because meaning is never in one action. Meaning is in repetition across context. You start seeing pattern connection between earlier signals and this stage. Hair, neck, lips, objects, now touch. Everything connects. This is escalation, not randomness. A woman who is not emotionally engaged does not progress through these stages in sequence. Now, something important happens. You realize this is not about attraction signs alone. This is about emotional regulation expressed physically. When emotional intensity rises, body looks for expression outlet. First, inward signals appear. Hair movement, neck touch, lip attention, object interaction. Then, outward expression begins. Physical contact. You are now inside final stage of visible signaling. But here is where confusion increases for most men, because physical contact can still feel ambiguous. So you look for clarity in reaction. You wonder what to do next. This is where control matters more than interpretation. If you overreact, you break natural flow. If you ignore it completely, you miss connection opportunity. Correct response sits in neutral awareness. You acknowledge moment without forcing escalation. You stay present. You maintain eye contact. You continue conversation without tension shift. That balance keeps interaction stable. Now observe deeper layer. Does she repeat contact later? Does her touch become slightly more frequent? Does she maintain relaxed posture after contact or pull away immediately? These patterns reveal intention level. Brief accidental touch disappears quickly. Repeated intentional touch builds consistency. You start noticing something else. Her body language becomes more aligned with yours. Posture sinks slightly. Movement rhythm matches conversation pace. Silence between sentences feels less awkward. This is not coincidence. This is subconscious alignment. Attraction is not just expression. It is synchronization. Now attention shifts again. You remember earlier signals. Hair was nervous activation. Neck was vulnerability exposure. Lips were focused attention. Objects were emotional release. Now physical contact completes progression. Everything builds into one system. You are no longer reading isolated behaviors. You are reading full sequence. Most men fail at this stage because they still treat signals as separate events. Or they see hair movement and ignore what comes after. That breaks understanding completely. Real reading happens across chain, not moment. Now, something important appears. You notice hesitation before next touch, slight pause, small delay in movement. This is decision moment. Her body is evaluating response environment. That pause tells you everything. Because hesitation means awareness of impact. When contact becomes more intentional, body evaluates risk and reaction. Now you see full picture. She is not randomly interacting. She is adjusting behavior based on feedback loop. Your response shapes next signal. If you stay present and calm, interaction continues naturally. If you become reactive, she reduces contact. If you show confidence without pressure, engagement increases. This is where emotional intelligence matters more than observation alone. Now you reach final layer of understanding. Attraction is not a single signal. It is a progression system. Each stage builds into next. Hair leads to neck. Neck leads to lips. Lips lead to objects. Objects lead to physical contact. Physical contact leads to alignment. Now you understand structure instead of guessing meaning. One more moment appears. She touches your arm again while speaking. Slight smile, comfortable tone, no tension. This is not confusion anymore. This is confirmation of connection. But here is the mistake point. Most men at this stage try to escalate too fast. They assume signal means immediate action. That breaks natural rhythm. Correct understanding is different. You allow progression to continue at natural pace. You do not force outcome. You observe consistency. Now, shift focus inward. What changed from beginning of interaction to now? At first, you are decoding words. Now, you are reading behavior patterns. That shift alone changes outcome completely. Because words are controlled, behavior is revealed. Now you reach final realization. Attraction was never hidden. It was never unclear. It was just not verbal. You were trained to listen instead of observe. That is why signals were missed. Now everything becomes visible. Hair, neck, lips, objects, touch, alignment, full chain. You understand interaction at structural level, not emotional assumption, behavioral sequence. Now bring everything together. When you recognize early signals, you stop chasing verbal confirmation. You stop guessing. You start observing patterns in real time. That removes confusion completely. You no longer overthink silence. You no longer misread comfort. You no longer miss escalation moments. You read behavior as system instead of isolated actions. Final realization sits here. You are not reacting to women anymore. You are reading patterns before reaction even becomes necessary. That changes how you move in every interaction. Now step out of interpretation mode. Stay grounded in observation. Because clarity replaces confusion only when attention stays consistent. If you want deeper breakdowns like this, like the video and subscribe. Tell me where you are watching from. Drop your city in the comments section.